This is the Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021 afternoon session of the Portland City Council. Keelan, please call the roll.
Good afternoon. Rubio.
Here.
Ryan. Hardesty.
Here.
Max. Wheeler.
Here. Under Portland City Code and state law, the City Council is holding this meeting electronically. All members of the council are attending remotely by phone, and the city has made several avenues available to the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The council is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact and to promote physical distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens the public health, safety, and welfare, which requires us to meet remotely by electronic communications. Thank you all for your patience, flexibility, and understanding as we manage through these challenging circumstances to conduct the city's business. And I want to note for the record that both Commissioners Ryan and Maps are now with us. We will now hear the rules of order and decorum from our city attorney. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. The published council agenda at portlandoregon.gov/auditor contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony while council is holding electronic meetings. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When your time is up, the presiding officer will ask you to conclude. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being placed on hold or ejected from the remainder of the electronic meeting. Please be aware that all council meetings are recorded. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. Our first item is item number 136.
Amend the comprehensive plan map and the zoning map to implement the expanding opportunities for affordable housing package B.
Very good. First, we'll hear from the attorney about today's proceedings.
I think, Mayor, because this is a legislative proceeding, it would just start with staff.
Very good, colleagues. Today, BPS staff will be presenting the expanding opportunities for affordable housing package B. I'd like to turn it over to BPS Commissioner in Charge, Carmen Rubio, to introduce the project.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the first land use project to come before council since I've become the Commissioner of Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And I'm excited to see projects that use the zoning code and land use regulation to address the housing crisis. And I'm pleased that this is the first land use proposal that promotes housing choice and affordability. So today we'll be hearing from staff who present recommendations on proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan map and zoning maps that aim to facilitate affordable housing on land owned by community-based organizations. So I'll now turn it over to BPS staff Eric Engstrom and JP McNeil to walk us through the agenda and the proposal this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Eric Engstrom. I manage the Comprehensive Planning Group at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. As the Commissioner mentioned, we're here to talk about Package B of a previously adopted project called the Expanding Opportunities for Affordable Housing. This project was a result of a grant from Metro in partnership with Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. It was focused on faith communities and identifying barriers to the development of affordable housing by faith-based and other community-based organizations. The original project, which you heard last spring, adopted zoning code amendments and map changes to facilitate community-based organizations to further housing opportunities on their campuses and sites. The ordinance that adopted the initial project also included a directive to study 5 additional sites for consideration for zoning map and comprehensive plan map changes. Essentially what happened is you held hearings on the original proposal, and during those hearings, you heard suggestions for other sites that hadn't been considered up to that date. Because the council was interested in acting quickly for the sites that were already in the pipeline, you deferred these 5 sites to a future action and asked us to go back and do more engagement and analysis. So we bring you these back today for our recommendations on those 5 sites, and I will turn it over to JP to talk more specifically.
Thanks, Eric. Good afternoon, Commissioner Rubio, Mayor Wheeler, commissioners. For the record, I'm JP McNeil. I'm with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and I am going to attempt to share my screen. Nod if you're able to see that.
Yep, looks good.
Wonderful. So, as Eric mentioned, we're here to talk to you about the expanding opportunities for affordable housing package B. I think he kind of covered the how we got here portion of the project, that this is the second part of the first phase of the expanding opportunities for affordable housing. And there's a package of zoning map, zoning code, and comprehensive plan map changes through that project. And 19 sites were rezoned for that project. And we're here looking at 5 additional sites. So to that end, this fall, in the fall of 2020, Eric and I, we conducted some targeted outreach tailored to each site of those 5 sites. We engaged with property owners, neighbors, neighborhood associations, the previous testifiers from the first phase of the project that were interested in these sites, and other stakeholders that we identified. And we had some direct communication and one-on-one meetings with folks. And we also met with the infrastructure bureaus to get their take on infrastructure concerns for these 5 sites. And then from that, we set up 5, or actually, I apologize, 4 community meetings, 1 for each site, except for 1 site that we didn't have a meeting for, and I'll get to that later. So we set up community meetings via Zoom, obviously, and we were able to discuss the proposal and hear concerns and advocacy for and against the proposals. And out of those meetings and our outreach, we developed our report and some recommendations that we drafted, and then we shared those with the stakeholders that were participating in the meetings, got comments from them. Public notice was sent to residents and neighbors of the sites last in January and February, and here we are today at the council hearing. So what I'm bringing to you now is our analysis and recommendation on those 5 sites. Here's a map showing you where the 5 sites are located in the city. 3 of them are in inner northeast Portland. One is the Tabor Heights United Methodist Church is on southeast 64th and Stark. And then the Robeson Jewish Home, Rose Schnitzer Manor site is in southwest Portland in the Hayhurst neighborhood. The first site, I'm going to describe to you the St. Philip the Deacon site. This site is on the corner of Northeast Knott, Northeast Rodney, in the Elliott neighborhood, the Elliott Conservation District. It's currently developed with the St. Philip the Deacon Church. There's some parking, and there's also the one of the property on the east side is a single dwelling zone. There's a house on that site. And so the hatched area in this map is where the church is, and then the grayed out but not hatched area is the single dwelling zone. And so the current zoning is RM1, which, whoops, no, that's not what we want to do. The current zoning is RM1. It's a lower density multi-dwelling zone. The proposal is to rezone it to CM3, which is a higher intensity mixed use commercial zone. It would also get the D overlay, which is the design overlay. And that's just because generally CM3 zoning also has the D overlay placed on it as well. One thing to note about this site is that we're including both the church property and then that property to the east that has the house on it. And the reason for that is that for continuity in the zoning and the zoning map, we generally don't want to leave an orphan parcel with just one single zoning designation. And so we would typically rezone an entire block face that has adjacent zoning. So just for consistency purpose, that's why that other property is being wrapped in. And that actually comes into play in another site in Mississippi as well. So of all the sites that we're talking about today, this one has the most advanced development plan for the site. The property owners, the church, has applied for Metro bond funding for affordable housing. I believe you'll hear more about that during the testimony. And my understanding of their proposal is that they would like to redevelop the site, possibly maintain the church on one level of a new structure, and then build affordable housing above that would benefit longtime residents of Northeast Portland that may have been displaced in recent years and help them to return to the neighborhood. So our recommendation for this site is to rezone it to CM3. It's based on the fact that in our outreach, we heard support from the neighbors, neighborhood association, neighborhood interest, community-based organizations that are also working on affordable housing. We heard no opposition to the proposal. There were no serious infrastructure concerns raised by city bureaus, and the proposed development is consistent with the intent of the expanding opportunities for affordable housing project to develop affordable housing on sites with community-based organizations. So a recommendation for this one is to rezone it to CM3. Are there any questions on that one? Hearing none, I will move on. So our next site is the Mississippi site. This is two properties zoned R2.5, which is a a higher density single dwelling zone. It's at the corner of Mississippi and Prescott. And so the northern property is developed with a house that's currently in use as it's a rooming house, essentially. It's operated by a longtime resident of the neighborhood who inherited it from family. And she rents the rooms out at below market rates to folks who may have been impacted by displacement in the neighborhood. And the other property to the south is it's a house on it's a single dwelling unit. And that's the property that property is also being wrapped in just for consistency's sake, just so that it wouldn't create an island of RM2 if this was rezoned in the R2.5 zoning area. And so that is our proposal. The proposal would be to rezone it to RM2, but that's a low to mid density multi-dwelling zone. And so the backstory is that the owner of the rooming house requested the zone change to help her expand her community housing use on the site and also to apply for grant funding. She's been working with Prosper Portland to improve her site and has applied for grant funding, and that grant funding is contingent on the site being not a single dwelling zone. So she's requested multi-dwelling, and it would also enable her in the future if she wanted to expand on the site for more affordable housing. So our recommendation for this site is that it be rezoned to RM2. We heard a lot of testimony in support of the proposal from the neighborhood association and neighbors and Micro Enterprise Service of Oregon, who are working with the property owner as well to expand her use on the site. And we didn't hear any opposition to the rezoning proposal, and there was no infrastructure concerns. It's adjacent to a mixed use corridor, so it's not really a spot zoning. It's right next to what's happening on Albina and Mississippi to the south. And so this property, it's also consistent with the intent of the expanding opportunities for affordable housing, which is to create more opportunities for affordable housing. Are there any questions or comments on this site?
Commissioner Hardesty has a question.
Sure.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. So does that mean that because of the change in zoning, that this property has to become affordable housing? And then the second end of that is, what does affordable housing mean to you, JP?
Well, affordable housing to me in this case, as defined by the property owner, was she says that she's renting out at 25% below market level. And so she's renting out to longtime residents at lower rates. It's not in any way regulated or required, but it's to help her continue to do that and expanding her use. But it doesn't require any changes. It doesn't require affordable housing. It just allows her to continue doing what she's doing and do more of it.
JP, so if she woke up the next day after we changed the zone and decided she wanted to sell it to a developer, what would happen?
Nothing would stop her from doing that.
And the developer wouldn't be tied to our vision of housing that people could afford to live in?
No. So this with any of these zone changes through the legislative process, we can't attach any sort of conditions. So if the properties are rezoned and council approves it, they're just rezoned. There's nothing that ties a future property owner to developing it with affordable housing. That's the case with all of the expanding opportunities for affordable housing properties, because the rezone with the legislative process can't condition future uses on it. It can just create allowances for what the zoning code allows on that property, on any property with that zoning.
And last question before I get bogged down in the details, JP, is could we put restrictions? Because I'm concerned that we're doing this for very lofty purposes, but if there's no guarantee that this actually leads to housing that people can afford to live in, I become very concerned that we're just creating more loopholes for developers that are not that do not have a commitment to housing people can afford to live in. So I guess that's my last question until we get through public testimony. But to me, that's a mistake that we've made over and over again in our land use planning. And I would want to know what we as a council can do to make sure when we change the land use law to make it affordable, that we actually are able to make it affordable.
To answer your question, Commissioner Hardesty, to my knowledge, there's really not any way for us to condition that this property or any of these properties are used for affordable housing. And I believe that that's under the land use laws. We're not able to do that. I would defer to the city attorney if she has anything else to add to that. It is a concern, and that's actually something, it'll come up in one of the later properties where we're talked about that there wasn't any sort of, the property owner doesn't actually have a plan, and that was raised concerns. And there are other ways of rezoning property that could have more conditions. You may not be able to require affordable housing, but you could require infrastructure concerns, which is how it came up with one of the other properties. But I think that the larger question of how the city can require affordable housing on properties that are rezoned, I think is a question for the attorneys and for council on how those changes can be made at a higher level.
Thank you. I think Lindley wanted to weigh in.
Okay.
Let me go to video. Commissioner, I think the way that we have typically done it is either through the zoning code itself, where we provide incentives to provide affordable housing, or we place requirements on a particular zone as a whole. But when we're doing this legislatively, it's not feasible to place particular conditions on particular properties. I think JP was referring to, if somebody went through a quasi-judicial comprehensive plan map, zoning map amendment, and there were relevant criteria, then we can place some conditions on that change in zoning, but not through the legislative process.
Thank you for that, Lindley. I think that's going to be a huge concern of mine, because again, I think the properties that presented to the city council earlier, we showed some real promise, but only if those organizations are the ones that do the development that they told us they were going to do. And honestly, we can't afford to screw this up again, because we continue to pass things that are supposed to provide affordable housing, and it's not affordable. So I just want to put that on the record as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay. No further comments or questions.
I have a comment, and it's
Sure.
slightly esoteric. As Commissioner Hardesty raises a very valid concern as we're balancing these issues. The way I look at this is slightly different. We're in a crisis, and we have community members and organizations and institutions approaching us, and they're saying, if you'll meet us halfway, we could make something happen here that will get people off the streets or get people into a lower income housing situation that the city cannot do on its own. But Commissioner Hardesty is right that it only is a meeting halfway, meaning we are doing this and we are taking an act that is a bit of a leap of faith. We are assuming that when the community comes to us and asks us to do something for the purpose of supporting vulnerable populations in our community, they're not going to screw us. And they could. So Commissioner Hardesty is absolutely right about that. But in a time of crisis, we also have to trust that the institutions we're working with, in this case, it includes some faith institutions. It includes some neighborhood players who have demonstrated a commitment to this kind of housing historically, and they've done so without either the blessing or the support of City of Portland. They've just done it because they believe it's the right thing to do. But the commissioner is right that these institutions don't last forever. People don't last forever. And it's very possible that at some point down the road, the good intentions that are being proposed here could in fact turn out to be an economic bonanza for a profit-seeking developer. And so I want to acknowledge that while I believe Commissioner Hardesty is factually correct in the concerns she's raising, I also believe that this is an opportunity for us to show an act of good faith and work with people and institutions in the community who want to work with us to help address a withering crisis. And so that's how I have tried to rationalize, Commissioner Hardesty, the very valid points that you've raised. And I appreciate you putting them front and center.
All right. And actually to segue to the next site, so that Commissioner Hardesty, one more point on that is these first two sites that I've shown you are the only two that we're recommending, that staff is recommending a zone change on. And it's because both of them have some demonstration of good faith on the owners and some sort of a plan. And the other ones, not to say there aren't good faith efforts with other ones, but they just don't feel ripe, or there's too much opportunity for something else to happen on the site. We felt that these first two, particularly with St. Philip the Deacon, they have a pretty dialed in plan of what they want to do and they're moving ahead. And the Mississippi site, it's a community member that's already doing good work on that site and just wants to do more of that. So we are taking that as good faith. So the next site I want to talk to you about here is the Cedar Sinai Park site. It's also the Robeson Jewish Home, or Rose Schnitzer Manor. This is it's a 10-acre site in Southwest Portland. It's owned by Cedar Sinai Park. They also operate the Robeson Jewish Home and Rose Schnitzer Manor on the adjacent sites to the north and to the west. And they provide assisted living and on those sites. So it's currently zoned, it's 10 acres, it's zoned R10, which is a low density single dwelling zone. And the southern portion of it has the C environmental conservation zone over it. It's mostly undeveloped, the site. There's a small parking lot in the northwest corner. There's a lot of vacant area that's somewhat disturbed in the R10 portion of the zone. And then the C overlay zone area of the property is forested with walking trails for residents of Rose Schnitzer and Roberson Jewish Home and neighbors as well. So the proposed zone change would be to RM1, which is low density multi-dwelling zone. Cedar Sinai Park doesn't have a specific development plan for the site at this time. They say that they would like to redevelop it for affordable housing for seniors on the portion of the site to the north, and then maintain the C over the environmental areas, wood is forest and walking trails. So this site generated probably the most controversy and discussion from neighbors, and it has a number of issues that need to be addressed, we feel, before the site would be rezoned, and that includes some infrastructure issues. The primary one being Southwest Boundary Street here on the northern portion of the site. To the east of the site is a single dwelling zone area. It's a narrow local service street. It's not developed to city standards. There's no sidewalks. And it currently functions as something of a cut through to Southwest Shattuck Road, which is just east of the site off the map there. And that's been a problem over the years for residents of Boundary Street. And Cedar Sinai Park has made some efforts to work with their staff and their vendors and their employees and their visitors to direct them not to use that as cut through street, to use Southwest 62nd Avenue, which cuts north, and Beaverton Hillsdale Highway is just to the north on the, where it gets cut off there on the north and on the top of the map there. And despite that, those efforts, it's still been a problem, and the neighbors have been upset about it for years. There's been no recent traffic analysis or traffic impacts studies on Boundary Street. And that's something that PBOT would want to see before there was any redevelopment or rezoning of the site, to see what's going on Boundary Street, to try to address concerns about cut through traffic or improvements to the street, which the neighbors are not too keen on. So there's a lot of issues around the Boundary Street piece that still need to be addressed and studied. There's also, from transportation perspective, Southwest Gilchrist Court comes up to the southeast portion of the site. And typically PBOT would want to see more improved street connectivity there to connect that to the street grid. That does cut through the C overlay, which is environmental conservation land. So PBOT would want more opportunity to study that and weigh the benefits of the natural resources with street connectivity. And there's just more work that needs to be done around that. And also the Bureau of Environmental Services had some concerns about stormwater management on the site. And so beyond the infrastructure concerns, we also heard some from the neighbors, as I mentioned, about Boundary Street. There are concerns about the lack of specificity of a proposal, and sort of to what Commissioner Hardesty was saying, that this could be rezoned and there's nothing that ties Cedar Sinai Park to actually develop it with affordable housing. Or so that was a big concern of the neighbors as well. And also just with the environmental zoning on the site and the forest and the trees, there are concerns about, damage to that. So after we met with neighbors and the infrastructure bureaus and the property owner, we came to the conclusion that rezoning this proposal would be better addressed through the quasi-judicial process, which is what, as Lindley was mentioning, the quasi-judicial process. It's a land use review. It goes through the Bureau of Development Services, and going through that process, there are a number of criteria that need to be met for the rezoning, for the zoning to be amended, for the map to be amended. And in order to do so, the city can require conditions of approval to make sure that those criteria are met. So it's a bit more stringent, and it allows for us to attach conditions of approval, say for transportation concerns or whatnot. So that allows more input and mitigation for any future development on the site. So our recommendation for this site is that we maintain the R10 zoning. The applicant, if they'd like to pursue their proposal for affordable senior housing, can still do so, but they should come through the quasi-judicial procedure, which is the typical procedure for, especially in this case, it's just one property. So typically when you're just looking at one property, that would be, for a zoning map amendment, would go through a quasi-judicial procedure. And we think that that would be the better option in this case.
May I ask what the proponent's response to that suggestion was?
The proponents were disappointed. They had hoped to see this move forward, but they're, I think, aware. They've developed two sites, the Robeson Jewish Home, Roschnitzer Manor. They've gone through the land use process and gotten conditional uses for those sites to be, especially the R7, that the Roschnitzer Manor had to go through an extensive conditional use process for that. It may be possible also for them to do more through conditional use or other options, but I think that they would prefer to have gone through this process. It would have been a cleaner, more straightforward process for them, but I think they are aware of their options.
I appreciate that. Thank you. They're an outstanding institution, and I figure they'll stick it out either way.
Right. Any other questions on this site? Okay, moving on here is to our legacy site. This is a full block site between North Vancouver and North Williams. It's just south of Dawson Park in the Elliott neighborhood. It's currently owned by Legacy Health System. It's part of their Legacy Emmanuel Hospital campus. It's currently developed with medical office buildings and parking. And it's zoned CI2, which is the campus institutional zone. And it's part of their larger campus. Some important context for this site is that the 2 blocks to the south were rezoned from the campus institutional to the CM3 zone with the first phase of this project. And that site, it's undeveloped and it's being returned to the community by Legacy to be redeveloped for community uses. And it's now under community control through the Williams and Russell Project Working Group. And so that's important because it's adjacent to the site and just to the south. And this was nominated for a rezoning by the Elliott Neighborhood Association in the testimony for the first phase of this project. And so their concerns and what they articulated why they'd like to see this rezoned was for 2 reasons. And one is that just as it is, it's not well integrated with the neighborhood, the fabric of the neighborhood. And also because the northern portion of the block along Stanton Street across from Dawson Park with the medical office building, there's not a lot of street activation there. It's not an active use. And so there's some safety concerns and crime concerns along that. And so they would like to see the site redeveloped to create more active uses on North Stanton Street that would activate the street space and maybe ameliorate some of those problems.
Say, I'm sorry I don't know this, but does CI2 preclude housing?
No, it doesn't.
It does not. So what is the advantage of the rezone here?
That's where I'm going, Mayor. So well, first of all, the property owner doesn't support it, but also where we landed on this when we met with the property owner and the neighborhood is that the rezone by itself doesn't accomplish any of what the neighbors would like to see, because essentially you could do similar, not exactly the same, but very similar housing development in the CI2 zone as you could in the CM3. So rezoning the site would be largely symbolic, and it wouldn't actually get to the ends that the neighborhood association would like to see. Rezoning it doesn't trigger or incent Legacy to do anything different on the site or to redevelop it or sell it off, and nor does leaving it preclude them from doing anything different. So it's largely symbolic. It wouldn't really do much. And so when we met with the stakeholders, we met with the Williams Russell Project Work Group and the neighborhood folks and Legacy, we all sort of landed on what you came to, Mayor, is that rezoning the site doesn't actually accomplish what they'd hoped it would. And for that reason, we're recommending that we maintain the existing zoning on the site. Property owner doesn't want to see it. It's part of their larger master plan campus. They don't really want to sell off the site. And as you noted, Mayor, it doesn't actually get to the desired results. So we're recommending maintaining the existing zoning.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Are there any questions or comments on this site?
JP, I was going to ask you a question, but you answered it, but you just made me think of one more, which is nothing stops the community from actually advocating with Legacy that they, in fact, make this site something that the community will find useful.
Right.
Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, there's nothing that stops it. The Legacy could redevelop the site in different ways. There's nothing on the zoning that says they can't. It's a matter of outside zoning issues, and it's a more community issues of working with, partnering, trying to find.
Thank you, JP. I just wanted that on the public record, right? It's like, Legacy wants one thing, the community wants something different. It's my hope that the community and Legacy come together and create something more spectacular. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, moving on. All right, and so the final site is Tabor Heights United Methodist Church on 61st and Stark in Southeast, pardon me. And pardon me if you can hear that noise in the background. My dryer ended and nobody's home to stop it, and so it just keeps going beep bop beep bop. And I don't know if you're hearing that through my earbuds. I hope not, but that's
we are.
I literally was just running all over my house to try and figure out what that was.
It's me. Nobody's here to turn it off, and
good. I thought I broke another appliance here and I was going to have to pony up. So thanks for fessing up to that.
Yeah, so just deal with it for a few more minutes, and when I'm done, I'll go shut it up. All right, this is the last site. So Tabor Heights United Methodist, it's zoned R5, which is a medium density single dwelling zone. It's occupied by the church parking lot, and then there's some grassy area on the site as well. The proposal would be to rezone it to RM1, which is low density multi-dwelling. So this site, we didn't have a meeting with the community for, we didn't get to that stage. So what happened with this one is it was nominated in the testimony for the previous phase of this project, and the property owner had no awareness of it. The person that nominated the site was a neighbor, and when I contacted them later, they kind of didn't really want to stand by the nomination. And then the property owner, when I contacted them, they were tentatively interested in the zone change, but they have no plans for the site. And I talked to somebody on the board of trustees for the church, and she was trying to organize some meetings with us, with the board, and that never really materialized. And so there's nobody really advocating for this rezoning proposal. The nominator's neighbor stepped away. The property owner isn't really motivated to rezone the site. They don't have a plan for it. So our recommendation is to simply maintain the existing zoning, since nobody's actually advocating for this and there's no proposal. Any questions on that one? All right, so that's it for the sites. In terms of the testimony, as of an hour or two ago, we had 18 pieces of written testimony to council. As of yesterday, there were 2 folks registered to testify for the hearing. It's quite possible that there's more than that, but we'll find out. But that's what we've been hearing back from folks, and that concludes my presentation of our recommendations. Unless there are any further questions, I would turn it back.
Colleagues, any questions, or alternatively, before we get to public testimony, I'd ask if there are any amendments at this time. And if so, I would propose we move them and second them to put them on the table so that people can refer to them during public testimony. And then, of course, we can talk about them after public testimony.
Is this the one that there was a request to add an emergency clause?
This was the one that was requested, but we are going to do that next week.
Got it. All right, just checking. Thank you.
Very good. Any other amendments that anybody'd like to put on the table? Then let's hear from people who've signed up for public testimony. Keelan, how many people do we have? I'd heard 2.
Mayor, we have 3 people on the call to testify.
Perfect, great. Call up the first one, 3 minutes, please. Name for the record.
First, we have Maria McDowell.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Before Maria jumps in, I also want to remind anybody that might be testifying today as a lobbyist must declare which lobbying entity he or she is authorized to represent in accordance with Title II of the City Code.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My name is Maria McDowell. I'm the rector of St. Philip the Deacon Episcopal Church in the Elliott neighborhood. Before you is a recommendation from BPS to upzone 120 and 130 Northeast Knott Street from RM1 to CM3. I'm asking that you make an amendment to the motion to make it an emergency declaration. I understand now from Commissioner Rubio that will happen next week. I would like to simply highlight that this is extremely important for our timeline. That you vote to approve this upzone, if not today, certainly next week with immediate effect. This will actually enable us to complete our application for LIFT funding due on March 25th of this month. Since I last testified before the council in May of 2020 on support of the Expanding Affordable Housing Opportunities Program, much has happened at St. Philip the Deacon. We are an African-American parish with a long history of civic engagement and support of the Black community, and we are partnering with PCRI, Urban League of Portland, and Northwest Pilot Project to welcome our elders home. We are excited to once again work with these partners on this new project. Together, we want to build a scattered site development that will provide close to 140 units of permanent supportive housing to our Black elders. And we are at this time considering 100%, 30% or lower MFI in that housing. At St. Philip, we will welcome our elders into the Alcina, named after the Reverend Alcina Elaine Caldwell Boozer. As the first Black female Episcopal priest ordained in Oregon and a beloved former principal of Jefferson High School, the Alcina will stand next to Matt Dishman Community Center and Unthank Plaza as a testament to Black elders who have committed themselves to the service and care of all the residents of their beloved city. To do this, we need your immediate vote. In May of last year, this council directed BPS to initiate and carry out the required upzoning hearing process and return to the council in September of 2020 with a recommendation. COVID and a summer of civic resistance turned all well-oiled processes into quagmires. BPS did indeed gather our community and neighbors, for which we are very grateful. Thank you, JP. Thank you, Eric. And after performing due diligence in the fall of last year, they are now recommending that both 120 and 130 Northeast Knott be granted our upzoning request. Our deadline for applying for LIFT is at the end of this month. We need you to join us as partners in welcoming our elders by voting to approve the upzone with immediate effect. If you can approve it today, that would be wonderful. If on the 10th, that also would be excellent. But you would help us bring to completion this significant first step in building the Alcina. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Maria. And just so you're put somewhat at ease, if the emergency clause was adopted either today or next week, it would still have the same effective date. It would be off by 1 week. But if, as Commissioner Rubio has said, if we can get the emergency clause next week, that would definitely work within your timeline.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Next up, we have Carl Burginski.
Hi, Carl.
Hello, my name is Carl Burginski.
Carl, you may have muted yourself. Can you try to unmute and start over?
Yes, excuse me.
Thank you.
My name is Carl Burginski. I'm calling on behalf of St. Philip the Deacon Church. And I can't think of a more worthy project to have the community support as well as the support of mayor and the commissioners of our city. St. Philip has long served the community and wishes to do so in a new format and meeting the needs of the seniors of the community as well as the Black community overall. So I appreciate your support of this, and I hope you will provide for the emergency authorization for the upzoning very shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl.
Next up, we have Trisha Patterson.
Hi, Trisha.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Trisha Patterson. I am here on behalf of Portland Neighbors Welcome. Portland Neighbors Welcome is a grassroots pro-housing, pro-tenant organization. Last year, we testified in support of the expanding opportunities for affordable housing, which supports the creation of more affordable homes on land owned by religious institutions and other community-based organizations. We believe that these organizations are important partners in ensuring that affordable homes are available in all neighborhoods in Portland. And now, as you know, Council has the opportunity to build on the foundation of this project by rezoning 5 sites that were identified in public testimony. For sites 1 and 2, we support the staff recommendation to rezone and to provide future residents access to high opportunity neighborhoods with community support. For site number 3, we recognize the inequitable and racist history that has led this site to be condemned by the city, displacing Black residents and business owners. While we believe affordable housing is a key part in righting those wrongs, we encourage Council to follow the lead of Black communities developing solutions through the Hill Block redevelopment process. For site number 4, we disagree with the staff recommendation and we support rezoning the site as there's a pressing need for affordable housing in Southwest Portland. We believe that the city has sufficient tools to mitigate the neighborhood traffic concerns. And for the last site, for site number 5, while we think that this is a great opportunity for affordable housing, we agree with staff that the owner needs to be an advocate for the rezoning to occur. We appreciate the ongoing work of City Council, of the Planning and Sustainability Commission, and the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to change Portland's zoning codes to address our housing crisis. So thank you for taking testimony.
Thank you. Thank you, Tricia. We appreciate it. And thank you for your specificity.
Mayor, I had a question for Trisha, if I may.
Yeah, Commissioner Hardesty. Tricia, are you still on? Tricia, are you still there?
I think we may have lost her.
Yeah. Oh,
No,
no.
I think I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't unmute.
I was like, oh, darn, she's gone. Thank you for your testimony, Trisha. I was curious about the number 4 item that you disagreed with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And let me just start by saying I agree that we need more affordable housing in Southwest. But as we heard from the testimony originally, that property owner has not been a good neighbor and working with the neighbors to mitigate what could be some challenges if this project moved forward. I'm curious as to why you say that the African-American community is supportive of number 4.
I don't believe I said that. I said that for number 3.
Oh,
For number
okay.
4, I said we disagree. We do disagree with staff recommendations, and our reasoning was Southwest is underserved for affordable housing. It's near frequent transit service, and it is a high opportunity neighborhood. It's an up and coming neighborhood that needs affordable housing, but we encouraged council to follow the lead of the Black communities for site number 3.
Got it. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. I mixed up 3 and 4 apparently.
That's
I
okay.
appreciate you clarifying that for me. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Keelan, the next individual, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. That completes testimony.
All right, very good. Then this is the opportunity for council discussion. Colleagues. Well, I'll put in my word here. I agree with what Trisha just said. I think she gave a very level-headed appraisal. I will take the lead of the commissioner in charge on the question with regard to number 4. But I agree with Trisha. Number 5 is curious to me. It's hard for me to understand why it's on the list if the property owner is not being an advocate. It sounds like somebody else proposed that property on behalf of the property owner, but the property owner is lukewarm. And that gets us back to Commissioner Hardesty's point earlier. So I'd be somewhat circumspect about number 5. I will be open to Cedar, Sinai, and item number 4, as Trisha had proposed, if for no other reason than that I trust the institution and they have a record that suggests to me that they'd be both honorable and effective in terms of their efforts there. But again, I'm not as close to it as the commissioner in charge. And if the commissioner in charge recommends something else, I'd be inclined to defer. 1 and 2, I think, are very clear, and they're clearly within the goals that have been established. So I appreciated those comments. Commissioner Hardesty has her hand up, and then Commissioner Rubio.
I will defer to Commissioner Rubio if you want to respond to the mayor's question.
I actually was going to say something else, but I will say that we will definitely take note of your interest, and we will go back and we will do another look, and I'll talk to the staff.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor, I was just going to say, I think the staff did what we asked them to do. We asked them to go back, work with these community partners, come back with a clear plan. But I remember clearly the conversation about the number 4, which was the community really felt that they could not build a good relationship with the institution that wanted to build housing. It will never work if they're not working with the community to build something that is actually mutually beneficiary for the community. I agree with the testimony that I heard about the desperate need for affordable housing in Southwest Portland. But again, since we can't make people build housing that people can afford to live in, and when I say affordable, I mean 30% and below the median family income, because 80% is not affordable for working people in our community. And so I am concerned that the more we change land use law with the hope that folks will build affordable housing, that we will end up here in a few years going, what the heck have we done? But I 100% support the two that staff are recommending, and open to seeing whether or not Southwest has created new community partnerships in their desire to build this property.
Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you. I just want to make sure to thank our community partners that were involved in this whole process. Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, Unite Oregon, Rose CDC, PCRI, Catholic Charities, Metro, and other housing sector volunteers for working with the city to make these projects a reality. And projects like this are allowing our community leaders who are experts in their communities to truly engage on these issues that they're best suited to lead. So I look forward to seeing that again next week. And also want to thank BPS staff, Eric and JP, for their hard work on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments?
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. It looks like we actually have one more person who indicated the wrong item to testify on.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sure. Let's
Is that
hear it.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
Thank you. Ravi Reddy.
Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I am on the page where I had to give my request. I didn't know where this was, and I had indicated the wrong one.
Yeah, no problem. Good to have
My
you.
testimony is with regards to the site 4, which is the CSP site, the Cedar Sinai site. Unfortunately, in the presentation, it was site 3. So I think that was what the confusion was earlier. But I'm a neighbor who lives on the street, on Boundary Street. So I'm about 3-4 blocks away from where the Cedar Sinai East lot is. So the street currently is used as a walking street for many of the elders who live on the old age homes that are located there. And, you know, building equitable, affordable housing is very important and very near and dear to my heart. But it has been a challenge to address some of the issues with CSP, to address both traffic, just having them respond to any request, or just having a good conversation. And the neighborhood association has been trying to establish that relationship and build it to the point of constructing multiple good neighborhood agreements, but they haven't been as equally met by both parties. And in every instance that has been brought up, we being sort of the stepchild versus a granddad. You know, the relationship is not equal because they have more of a power dynamic than the rest of the community. So that's the major issue that we are dealing with you recommending this site, Mayor. The reason I understand CSP has been around forever. They have run complexes downtown and here, and they're a good neighbor, but not with this neighborhood. They're a good neighbor in the city, but not with the neighborhood that they are so close to dealing with. That's the major issue that we dealt with on this purpose. The next part that I want to bring up is the way the CSP actually communicated this whole project with the neighborhood was non-transparent, and it was never really brought up to the neighbors. And it was sprung upon a week before May 2020, when we had to give testimony across the neighborhood. So those are sort of, I'm just touching on some of the major aspects that we dealt with in the last year to come up to this today.
Ravi, thank you for that perspective. And could I parry back what I think I heard, just so that I have a clear understanding of your intentions? It sounds like you're not opposed to the idea of affordable housing in this location. It sounds like your primary objective is the process and you feel that people's input was not taken into account and you were not respected, the neighborhood's interests were not respected during this process. Is that a fair interpretation of what you've said?
I will characterize it slightly differently, but the gist is that we would want to build some, I mean, we agree that they need to have more affordable housing. We agree with that. But without a proper plan and understanding of what is going to happen, it puts everyone at an anxiety level that's relatively high when you have rest of the street that is essentially, small families. And then the idea of building 700 X number of flats is what caused everyone to concern. And without actually having a proper plan before that was proposed.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep, definitely.
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate your being here to share that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any further comments or questions? Then at this point, thank you to everybody who provided testimony. The record is now closed. I would ask if anybody has any questions of staff or if this has inspired any amendments that anybody'd like to put on the table today. Hearing no further questions or statements from my colleagues, I want to thank staff who have worked very, very hard to prepare this proposal and to help facilitate the creation of more affordable housing in Portland. I also want to thank the many folks who submitted testimony on MAP app, to the Planning and Sustainability Commission, who's been very actively engaged in this, to the coalition members who are changing our city's rules to help make Portland a more inclusive and accessible place to call home. Thank you all. We will reconvene to continue this item on March 10th at 2 p.m. time certain. And Commissioner Rubio, since this is your package, I'll give you the last word.
I think I just summed it up earlier. Just very grateful to staff and really looking forward to seeing these come to fruition.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. That completes that item. Keelan, the next item, so I can turn my page over here, is item number 137, please.
Waive Portland zoning code requirements for the ground floor, first floor of buildings located in the design overlay zone for the installation of lighting and security gates on exterior facades during COVID-19 emergency.
Thank you, Keelan. I've mentioned the term green shoots in quite a few recent conversations, signs that Portland and Portlanders are ready to reemerge from a long winter of uncertainty and appropriate but difficult restrictions on daily life. We're starting to see vaccine distribution picking up, physical distancing restrictions are beginning to ease, and local storefronts and restaurants closed for so long are starting to reopen. We're seeing hotels begin to expand their operation. New stores are opening or making plans to open in our city. And while we're not returning to normal, we're at least on the path towards returning to normal. And importantly, families are getting ready for kids to return to school. So sunshine and warmer weather is drawing us outside, and the hope of a better 2021 is drawing us back to each other in both safe and careful ways. Both literally as well as figuratively, spring is arriving in Portland. There's a long way to go, but we are on our way. In a recent council conversations, colleagues, we identified economic recovery as a top priority for the city of Portland. The action before us today is one piece of the puzzle as we work to lay the foundation for a strong and sustainable recovery for our community. In this emergency, we're called upon to be creative and nimble in the support of our residents and our local businesses. It's all part of the same ecosystem, and every part of our social and economic fabric must be healthy if we're going to achieve our goal of building back better. I want to thank the Development Services Director, Rebecca Esau, and her team, and I especially want to thank Commissioner Dan Ryan and his team for partnering with us to thoughtfully bring this item forward. Commissioner Ryan, I want to thank you and take it away.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, colleagues. Our city was resourceful, responsible, and quick to act when COVID-19 forced businesses to shut down last spring and then again last fall. I complimented that action, and one reason why our city and our state is doing really well compared to others in terms of our COVID compliance on a public health standpoint. Our businesses have been nimble throughout all of this. Our focus on saving lives and protecting the community got us aligned and focused. We need to match that sense of urgency with a thoughtful and swift response to help our businesses reopen safely. As the mayor mentioned, one of our top 3 priorities is economic recovery, and this ordinance definitely breathes life into that commitment. This all means that we need to look at creative ways to more quickly allow businesses to make necessary safety and security improvements, including waiving some design review requirements. Don't get me wrong, the design review process in Portland adds tremendous value to our pedestrian environment and streetscape, our way of life, and the appearance and functionality of our commercial districts. In fact, it's a factor on why Portland is just so darn attractive. And during an emergency, some regulations may need to be examined and temporarily relaxed. The Bureau of Development Services has prepared an ordinance to allow a temporary waiver of design review requirements for exterior lighting and security gate improvements for businesses during COVID-19 emergency. I would like to thank the talented and dedicated staffers at Business Development Services, led by Director Esau, for putting this ordinance together, for their flexibility, and for giving us an opportunity to be nimble with how to help businesses get back to work. And I must add, they worked nonstop over the holiday winter storm weekend to make this happen. Also, I really want to thank Charity Montez on my team. She has been a leader on this item. And also to thank Sonia Szymanski and Amanda Watson on the mayor's staff for your collaboration. With that, I turn this over to Matt Wickstrom from BDS to explain this necessary ordinance. Matt, take it away.
Good afternoon, City Council. Thanks for having me. Could the Council Clerk please share the presentation? Thank you. And like Commissioner Ryan said, we're presenting an ordinance on safety and security today. Next slide, please. Mayor Ted Wheeler executed a declaration of emergency on March 12th, 2020. The emergency has been extended every 2 weeks since then. The purpose of the Portland Zoning Code is to implement the comprehensive plan and land use plans in a manner that protects the health, safety, and general welfare of Portlanders. The COVID-19 emergency has had an adverse effect on the health, safety, and general welfare of Portlanders. Businesses have been particularly impacted as a result of required temporary closings, reductions in customers, reductions in pedestrian activity, and operational modifications. Next slide, please. Further impacts on Portland businesses include a steep increase in vandalism. Vandalism increased 47% from March 2020 to November 2020, according to an Oregonian report based on Portland Police Bureau statistics. Burglaries increased 32% during the same time period. Mass vandalism events have been reported in almost all of Portland's commercial districts, including Southeast Hawthorne Avenue, Northeast Alberta Avenue, Northeast Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, 82nd Avenue, and the Hollywood District. Meanwhile, pedestrian counts have significantly decreased. A Portland Business Alliance in downtown Portland Clean and Safe District reported an 82% decrease in pedestrian activity comparing December 2019 and December 2020. Other commercial districts in Portland have also reported significant decreases in pedestrian activity. Repair costs associated with vandalism, decreases in pedestrian activity, and burglaries are among the many compounding issues facing Portland's businesses. Significant increases in insurance premiums have also been reported. Boarded up storefronts and vacant businesses are now a common sight in Portland. Most of Portland's commercial districts are located in the design overlay zone. This means that making necessary safety and security improvements may require approval through design review prior to applying for building permits. The design review process, like Commissioner Ryan said, is an important way to promote the conservation, enhancement, and continued vitality of special and distinct places in Portland. However, it can add a number of weeks or months to the process of obtaining a building permit. During an emergency, such processes may need to be evaluated as to whether they add value, as to whether the value they add is comparable to the needs of the time. The City of Portland has adopted policy related to crime prevention through environmental design, often referred to as CEPTED. The overlapping elements of CEPTED include natural surveillance, which is essentially eyes on the street, territoriality, which is a clear delineation between public and private spaces, access control, which is represents clear entryways and other features to discourage access to unwanted areas, or avoiding creating spaces where people cannot be easily observed. Activity support, promoting active uses and pedestrian and event goer activity, management and maintenance through keeping maintenance up to date and promoting corrections when damage occurs. Many CEPTED principles are accomplished through mechanical measures such as lighting, locks, security cameras, security gates, and fencing. When pedestrian activity and natural surveillance opportunities decrease, the need to look at mechanical measures can increase. The City of Portland also has a number of policies related to the pedestrian environment, such as limiting blank walls, requiring storefront windows, and requiring active ground floor uses. Goals are to create a pedestrian environment, a pleasant pedestrian experience by connecting activities occurring within a structure with the pedestrian environment. As far as the ordinance goes, the ordinance, as was mentioned, would waive design review requirements for exterior lighting. The lighting must be directed downward toward the sidewalk, parking area, or other exterior area. Appropriate fixtures for downward directed exterior lighting include gooseneck lights and sconces. No flashing lights or lights that project upward above the ground floor, first floor are allowed. The ordinance would also waive design review for exterior security gates. The security gates must be of an open grill variety and be at least 70% transparent.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Are we still on the original slide, or are you thinking the slides are changing?
Oh no, we are on slide. Thank you very much.
Could you go back, because we're still looking at the business impacts continued.
Okay.
I'd sort of like to see the others if we could just briefly.
Slide 4, please.
Thanks.
I think you may want to slide forward quite a bit.
This is the slide. This is the slide. The next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep doing this. Previous slide, please. This is the slide about city policy related to CEPTED and other issues. Next slide, please. This is a slide about waiving design review for exterior lighting. The photo is an example of a gooseneck light. Next slide, please. And this is the slide that I was just on. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, for correcting that.
No worries. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
The ordinance would also waive design review for exterior security gates. The security gates must be of an open grill variety and at least 70% transparent. Gate boxes must be hidden behind an awning, or if no awning exists must be painted to match the ground floor, first floor of the business. Finally, it is important to note that temporary security fencing, such as that's surrounding the Apple Store while they replace windows, is not addressed by this ordinance. And the ordinance specifically says that security gates are only allowed over the entrances. They're on any window associated with the main entrance. They aren't allowed on this ordinance is not allowing them on standalone windows. Next slide, please. Okay, finally, this ordinance does not apply to historic landmarks or to contributing structures in historic districts. The ordinance will expire when the declaration of emergency is no longer in effect. At that time, security measures installed as part of the ordinance will be considered non-conforming. The ordinance also states that the Portland Zoning Code non-conforming upgrade requirements do not apply for permits related to these security features. The Bureau of Development Services will bring up a follow-up ordinance to City Council to address uses and allowances for businesses during the COVID-19 emergency. And that concludes the presentation.
Very good. Thank you, colleagues. Any questions at this point? Seeing none, public testimony.
Yes, we have 5 people on the line to testify. First
Great.
is,
That will undoubtedly inspire some questions. Why don't you call up the first person, please? 3 minutes each, name for the record.
first up, we have Ivana Montez.
Welcome.
Ivana, are you able to unmute?
Why don't we go to the second person while Ivana tries to come on?
Okay. Next up, we have Amy Rothfelder.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear. You're good to go.
So good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, members of the council. For the record, my name is Amy Rothfelder. I serve as the Director of Government Affairs for the Portland Business Alliance. I'm here today on behalf of PBA to express strong support for this ordinance, which would waive zoning code requirements for the ground floors of buildings located in the design overlay zone, specifically for the installation of security gates on exterior facades during the state of emergency in the COVID-19 pandemic. As I'm sure most of you know, the Portland Business Alliance is Greater Portland's Chamber of Commerce and represents the largest and most diverse network of employers in the region. The Alliance advocates for the employer community at all levels of government to create opportunity and advance well-being for all who live and work in our region, and to support a healthy and resilient business ecosystem. We're proud to represent more than 2,000 members from 27 counties, 13 states, and virtually every industry sector. More than 80% of our members are small businesses. As I'm sure you are all acutely aware, the business community has been hit extraordinarily hard in the last year with the dual crises of the COVID-19 pandemic and the property destruction that came with the ongoing political violence in the Portland area. As we move into reopening our city's doors, it's imperative that businesses can adopt smart and sustainable security measures that allow employees to return to work safely. The current permitting and design review process for businesses located in the central city and subject to design overlay zone requirements can take over 100 days, which is about 3.5 months to complete. While we appreciate the swift action being taken here to allow for expedited approval while we are in the COVID emergency, we strongly encourage council to take action to make common sense reforms like this permanent. Waiting more than 100 days is clearly far too long for business and property owners to secure approval for simple improvement projects, especially at this time. If we as a city are serious about prioritizing a safe return to a new normal and working hard to rebound Portland's social and economic fabric, creative problem-solving policies like the one I'm here today to support are what we need to generate more of. Finally, I'd like to thank Mayor Wheeler and Commissioner Ryan for understanding this issue and actively working to solve it, and to council as a whole for beginning the critical work in our Development Services Bureau that will eliminate some of the current delays and get our city on the road toward a positive recovery and reopening. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Amy. Next individual, please, Keelan.
Let's try Ivana Montez again. Ivana, are you able to unmute?
Ivana, if you're on a phone, try *6. See if that helps. *6.
right.
Still no luck. Let's move on to Jessica then.
Okay, yep. Next up, we have Jessica Curtis.
Good afternoon, Jessica. Wait, Ivana, are you unmuted now? Nope, she's muted. Jessica, are you unmuted? Keelan, I'm going to let you do your job. Obviously, I'm not helping.
There we go. Looks like, Jessica, are you?
I was able to figure it out.
Okay.
Can you
Good
hear
job.
me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Fantastic. Well, good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and members of the council. My name is Jessica Curtis, and I am the general manager for Pioneer Place. I'm here today both as a Portland native who's deeply interested in investing in the future of my hometown, as well as on behalf of the shopping center and its owner, Brookfield Properties. I'd like to express support for item number 137, the emergency ordinance, which would waive zoning code requirements for buildings located in the design overlay zone, and specifically for the installation of exterior security gates. Pioneer Place proudly employs hundreds of Portland Metro residents and is a longstanding member of this community. We are downtown Portland's premier shopping destination, featuring many first-to-market consumer brands, as well as many locally owned and operated businesses. Along with many downtown businesses, however, we have been slow to recover from the ongoing impacts of the pandemic, civil unrest, and overall perceptions of the city's downtown core. As we look to the future, we believe it is important to ensure the safety and security of our guests, employees, tenants, and community. The current permitting and design review process for Pioneer Place to install the security gates is over 100 business days. In our current situation, that time frame presents considerable obstacles for landlords working to secure their buildings and safely and timely open back up for business. We are truly thankful for our longstanding relationship with and support from the Bureau of Development Services. By passing this ordinance, Pioneer Place would expedite the implementation of the much needed security measures in order to fully reopen during these extraordinary circumstances. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioner Dan Ryan, for working so hard to develop creative solutions. And thank you to the council for considering the emergency ordinance. With your support, we're eager to do our part in helping Portland continue to move forward safely and prosperously. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And Jessica, did I read recently that a new store, a Gucci store, is opening there? Is that correct?
We did. We opened Portland's, or actually Oregon's first Gucci store early February.
And obviously they opened the store with their eyes wide open, having seen the same national stories that we saw. I would gather that their opening here suggests that they see a positive environment going forward. Would you agree with that?
I would. You know, leasing deals develop over time, most definitely. So these conversations were had long before COVID. And however, yes, the sentiment in their opening is that they are hopeful for the future of Portland.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for testifying today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Mayor, could I ask Jessica?
Yeah, Jessica, if you're still there, Commissioner Hardesty had a comment.
Yes, hello.
Hi, thank you, Jessica, for your testimony. I'm curious, you quoted a statistic that pedestrian traffic is 82% down. And of course it is, and 99% of it is related to the fact that we closed down for COVID. I'm curious as to what your expectations are as far as that kind of pedestrian traffic as we start emerging. Clearly, we're not going to recoup 82% overnight. So I'm kind of curious as to what's the expectation if we pass this measure.
Yeah, I think that 82% decline in traffic was a result of a recent pedestrian count that was put on by the Portland Business Alliance and Downtown Portland Clean and Safe. And so that's for the downtown area, not specifically to the center, but for the downtown, most highly trafficked corners. And, you know, I think as things continue to evolve with COVID vaccinations and the opening up, you know, countywide, I think that will also play an impact on the recovery for the center and for downtown as well.
I couldn't agree with you more. I didn't want to give the impression that somehow downtown had 82% less pedestrians because somehow there was violence or fear of people being downtown. There's not much open downtown at the moment. And I think as we slowly start opening with safety measures in place, we will see more people walking about. I'm also looking at how do we make parts of downtown car-free so that we can expect people to be walking and skateboarding and biking and doing using other modes to actually explore all the beauty downtown. So just wanted to clarify that for the record. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Next up, we have Kristen Miner.
Hello, commissioners and mayor. Very nice to be able to testify today. And with your permission, I'd like to tag team with a design commissioner, Shanda Robinson, since this is really a joint response from the Landmarks Commission and the Design Commission.
All right, go ahead. Are you going to keep it to 3 minutes total, or you signed up separately?
We signed up separately.
Oh, yeah. So you just want to go back to back.
Yeah.
That's fine. So 6 minutes between the two of you, if that's what you'd prefer.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure.
The Portland Design Commission and the Portland Historic Landmarks Commission met in a joint session yesterday to discuss the ordinance before you today. Commission members are concerned about conditions across the city, and like all property owners, small businesses, and community members, we look forward to the end of the COVID-19 pandemic and the restoration of Portland's thriving commercial districts and vibrant streets. We have concerns. This is not what this ordinance delivers. At best, it delivers uncertainty, and at worst, it could deliver deliberate harm. Will people feel unwelcome, surveilled, and mistrusted? Will Portland's people-focused public realm be irreparably damaged? We don't really know, but we do know that physical security measures need to be reviewed to protect the livability of the city for everyone and to protect already marginalized people of color who are profiled by CPTED measures. Rather than exempting review, we strongly suggest an expedited and a low or no cost review. Commission members were in unanimous agreement that the proposed ordinance is hurtful, not helpful to Portland's recovery from COVID-19 and the host of other conditions currently at play in Portland. We ask that you abandon this ill-conceived strategy that contradicts Portland's 50-year legacy of pedestrian-focused planning, beginning with the original downtown plan in 1972, that bypasses the many security-enhancing alternatives that do comply with our development code, and that doesn't give due consideration to the people who will be injured by this CPTED-based policy, but who haven't had the opportunity to voice their concerns. I think with that, I'd like to go ahead and hand it to Chandra to finish up our letter. Chandra, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Kristen. And thank you, Mayor and City Council members. I appreciate your time today. My name is Chandra Robinson. I'm a member of the Portland Design Commission, and I'm here with Kristen to help convey the thoughts that the Portland Design Commission and the Historic Landmarks Commission came up with together in our joint session that Kristen mentioned. So to continue, there are many successful installations in downtown Portland. Their nature varies, but all have been vetted through the design review process to ensure the character of Portland's public realm is maintained and enhanced. One of the strengths of the design review process is that it ensures best practices are followed and alternative solutions are explored before permanent modifications that are detrimental to our people-focused public realm are installed. In the case of ground floor security, best practices include retractable scissor gates rather than exterior bars and gates, installation of riot glass or strong protective films on window glass, modifications that are sensitive to the architectural character of a building and a district, modifications that are easily reversible and don't damage the building, and security measures installed at the inside face of glass rather than the outside face of glass, which are already really common in Portland and do not require design review. Work that is done in an emergency isn't done with the long-term impacts in mind. The quick fixes proposed in this ordinance will become grandfathered conditions that can't be repaired without future design review and expense. And that means these security measures, which are a response to temporary conditions Portlanders expect council to address before summer arrives, will be permanent. And while sanctioned temporary security measures with a sunset date for removal are allowed within the parameters of our zoning code, permanent measures should comply with our community standards. The mission statements of our 2 volunteer commissions tell us that we provide leadership and expertise on urban design and architecture, and on maintaining and enhancing Portland's historical and architectural heritage. And one of our primary duties listed in the Portland Zoning Code is to provide advice on design matters to the hearings officer, Planning and Sustainability Commission, Prosper Portland, and to City Council. We are in service to you, the City Council, and in our capacity as your servants, we ask that you reject this SEPTED-based policy and instead instruct members of our commissions to work with the Bureau of Development Services staff to develop an alternative approach. We're really confident the charges of costliness and the length of the state mandated review timelines can be addressed within the framework of Portland Zoning Code and design guidelines. I thank you so much for your time and for letting us present our joint comments from design review.
Yeah, thank you both. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for your testimony. Chandra, I'm curious as to why you believe this temporary fix will be permanent. There's nothing, the ordinance is really clear that this will last as long as the state of emergency lasts. So I'm
confused. Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. That's a great question. So when you look at the ordinance, it actually says that there is a sunset date after which you cannot then install any security measures without design review. And then it really means that what's already been installed becomes a non-conforming condition, but there's no requirement in the code to actually change that non-conforming condition until you come in and say that you're making renovations to your project that require you to go through a Bureau of Development Services and go through design review. So at that point, then your planner would tell you that you have to correct any non-conforming conditions at your property as part of your new project. So what that means is that all of these cameras and grills that are going to go up and lights that are going to go up are going to stay there forever until someone decides they want to make a renovation.
Thank you for that. That is very helpful, but I will say that cameras have been removed from this document. I had an immediate concern about that as well, but it has been removed, so we're not considering cameras at all.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Commissioner.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is, thank you, Commissioner Hardesty, for that. I was going to add to it. We also have one more person I just found out is testifying, so maybe I'll make some comments. Why don't I just say them right now since I have your attention? I really want to thank the Design Commission for testifying on this issue today. I do want to say that it will be introducing an amendment to remove the SEPTED-based language as referenced by Commissioner Hardesty. And we also heard the mention of bars on windows. Another common misconception raised in regards to historic buildings. Let me be clear, historic buildings are not included in this ordinance and will still require design review. Lastly, I want to recognize that 40 years of design guidelines that require great transparency of this ground floor, which is why this ordinance requires open grill security gates with 70% transparency. So thank you again for coming to testify today. We'll continue to be great partners with you. And I just wanted to clarify this important issue.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Hardesty, did you have another comment? No, very good. Keelan, we have somebody else signed up for public testimony.
Yes, we have Michael Tillett.
Ah, great. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name's Paddy Tillett, 1317 Northwest 24th Avenue, Portland 97210. I'm an architect, a planner, and an urban designer, and I'm testifying on my own behalf today. It would be a grave mistake to remove design review from street level frontages. More than any other building feature, street frontages determine the quality and success of downtown streets. Defensive storefront features all too often break the connection between sidewalk user and what's going on inside the building. There are examples of zombie streets across the nation where such frontages have proliferated. There are no eyes on the street and pedestrians feel vulnerable, so they tend to avoid those streets. For the duration of the emergency period, BDS staff should perform design review of frontage change applications through a type 1 or 2 process. Most decisions will be non-controversial. Staff decisions could, however, be challenged and resolved through a type 3 public hearing if necessary. In such instances, the hearings officer may refer a complex case back to the Design Commission for resolution, but it seems these would be very infrequent. Restoration of vitality to our downtown depends on attractive streets with active storefronts. Greater security for storefronts can be achieved sensitively without aggressive measures such as harsh security lighting and armored surfaces. However, some owners will default to these extremes unless given design guidance and control. Those will set indelible precedents for others to follow. Current permitting requirements should remain intact, with the sole difference that city staff will temporarily administer design review of these particular frontages. City staff already administer design standards, which is to say the measurable requirements such as maximum building height or setback requirements. The proposal is that for the time being, they also review qualitative requirements, which are typically the responsibility of the Design Commission. So restoration of vitality to our downtown is far too important to be left open to well-intentioned but severely damaging influences of aggressive security measures. Please do not waive provisions of Portland Zoning Code 33-420, and please do not permit unregulated changes to our street frontages. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Okay, thank you for that testimony. Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say, colleagues, after receiving feedback from your offices and hearing concerns from community members regarding the use of language referencing crime prevention through environmental design, or CPTED, I propose an amendment to delete the findings listed in sections 7, 8, 9, and 10 of the filed ordinance and add the new findings to these sections. I have asked Matt to come back on to read those amendments, and I know they've also been forwarded to your offices. Hello, Matt. Welcome back.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. And I'll just make one correction. What we would be deleting is sections 7 and 8, and we'd be replacing it with sections 7, 8, 9, and 10. And so I'll read 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Thank you for that correction.
The City of Portland has adopted policy, design guidelines, and Portland zoning code regulations related to creating and maintaining a positive, this is section 7, related to creating a positive pedestrian environment in Portland. The City of Portland has adopted policy related to crime preventive design, and that's policy 4.13 in the 2035 comprehensive plan. This policy encourages building, site, and public infrastructure design approaches that help prevent crime. New section number 8 would be, the City of Portland has adopted policy related to the pedestrian environment, and this is policy 4.21 in the comprehensive plan. This policy is in part accomplished through the Portland Zoning Code regulations limiting blank walls on ground floor, first floors of buildings.
Oh, that scared me.
We've had some really entertaining Zoom.
Look, the bottom line is give Matt whatever he wants.
Sorry, the mail just came for the day. Okay, so I'll start reading section 8 again. Sorry about that. The City of Portland has adopted policy related to the pedestrian environment, policy 4.21 in the comprehensive plan. This policy is in part accomplished through Portland Zoning Code regulations limiting blank walls on the ground floor, first floor of buildings, and requiring a percentage of storefront windows on street-facing facades in order to provide a pleasant, rich, and diverse pedestrian experience by connecting activities occurring within a structure to the adjacent sidewalk areas. Section 9 would read, the Central City Fundamental Design Guidelines include a protect the pedestrian guideline to develop integrated identification, sign and sidewalk orientated night lighting systems that offer safety, interests, and diversity to the pedestrian. And that is guideline B2 from the Central City Plan Fundamental Design Guidelines. The community design guidelines include a crime prevention guideline, which is in part accomplished by providing lighting systems that include pedestrians. The Portland Zoning Code implements the comprehensive plan and includes development standards. This is section 10. It includes development standards to provide a more pleasant pedestrian environment by preventing large expanses of blank facades along streets. That's Portland Zoning Code section 33, 130, 230. The zoning code also includes regulations related to ground floor active uses. That's in Portland Zoning Code 33, 415.200, and the pedestrian environment, which is in 33, 130, 240. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Do you need a second, Commissioner Ryan? Did you make a motion? I second.
Commissioner Ryan has moved the amendment. Commissioner Hardesty has seconded the amendment. Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and call the roll on the amendment, please.
Rubio.
I want to thank the mayor and Commissioner Ryan, and I especially want to recognize Commissioner Ryan's staff, Charity Montez, for engaging closely with my team and taking in our concerns and feedback about this proposal. I'm happy to support this ordinance, and specifically because of the removal of the problematic language and the use of cameras. And I also want to highlight that there's a recognition among the colleagues that I've had a chance to speak to about this directly, about the need to look at the references to SUP-TED moving forward, and also possibly to find ways to address it where needed. And I've directed my staff to hold those conversations where appropriate with BPS. So thank you again, Commissioner Ryan, Mayor Wheeler, and staff for bringing this forward. I vote aye.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Rubio, for making those comments. I want to actually say, working through Charity Montez and her working with your team and Commissioner Hardesty's team over this last week has been just a really good example of, in spite of all this virtual crazy stuff that we have to manage, it was very nimble and it was very focused. And I just want to acknowledge that that was good government. And I just can't thank Director Esau and her team enough for really focusing on this and treating it as an emergency and showing that this is a city that works, and we're going to do all we can to, get the currency flowing and open up. So I vote aye.
Hardesty.
I also want to thank the mayor and Commissioner Ryan. This ordinance has gotten a lot better, and I'm very grateful that we incorporated changes based on the concerns that we heard from so many community members, including the change that just was adopted by us today. I think it's really important that a lot of times good intentions actually lead to really bad outcomes. And this is a great opportunity to see how listening to other voices and incorporating them in gives us much better public policy. So thank you both, Mayor Wheeler, and thank you, Commissioner Ryan. I'm happy to vote yes. Aye.
Max,
Aye.
Wheeler,
I just want to extend my gratitude and thanks to my colleagues. Commissioner Ryan, thank you very much for your exceptional work on this and your team, and to my colleagues for helping to shape this. I am mindful of what the testifiers had said about the proud legacy around design and design review in this city. And I believe that this ordinance has been carefully crafted to balance, on one hand, our respect for the lived environment and the architectural integrity of our built environment against the very real and very urgent need for this city to quickly get back up on its feet and recover. And that means not only ensuring that we have investments being made in our community, and but also confidence. We need to have our major employers and our major retailers and those who make the wheels turn in this city have confidence that this is still a place to do business. It's still a place to expand their operations. It's still a place for people to want to live, work, and play in this community. And during this crisis situation, that means we're going to have to take some innovative and unprecedented steps to respond to equally unprecedented times. And so I think this is very thoughtful. I'm very happy to support the overall measure, but I also just want to acknowledge the amendment that we're voting on right now. I think makes a great deal of sense, and it responds to some of the core criticism that was raised during the testimony. So I'm happy to vote aye on this amendment. The amendment carries. Next is the main motion is amended. Keelan, please call the roll.
Rubio,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted as amended. Thanks, everybody. Next up is 138.
Authorize the Bureau of Environmental Services to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for construction of the Northwest Aspen Combined Sewer Extension Project number E10953 through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Commissioner Maps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and hello to my colleagues. Today we have a proposal that comes out of Environmental Services. And of course, Environmental Services provides sewer and stormwater collection services to meet the city's current and future needs to protect public health, water quality, and the environment. As part of its non-conforming sewer program to connect all properties within the city to the public sewer system, Environmental Services is building a 420 linear feet of combined sewer and connecting 5 properties in Northwest Portland. To build the project, the city has a need to acquire permanent and temporary rights to 3 properties. Here today with a brief presentation are Rachel Fraugner, Environmental Services Senior Engineering Associate, and Ellen Kilmer, Portland's with Peabody. She's their right-of-way agent. So at this point, maybe I can turn it over to Rachel.
Great, thank you. There is a presentation if the council clerk can pull that up. Thank you. And I can do this. Hold on. There we go. Again, thank you, Good afternoon. My name is Rachel. I'm with the Bureau of Environmental Services, and Ellen Kilmer is here with the Bureau of Transportation. And as mentioned, we are here seeking authorization to acquire permanent and temporary construction easements for the BES project E10953 Northwest Aspen Avenue Combined Sewer Extension. Next slide, please. So this project, again, is part of the Non-Conforming Sewer Conversion Program, and this program constructs sewer extensions in areas where there is no public sewer access, bringing direct and individual service connections to non-conforming properties. This project will serve 5 properties with non-conforming sewers, and permanent and temporary construction easements are necessary for the construction and maintenance of the sewer extension. The reason why this is being brought to council as an emergency ordinance is due to the time constraints of the project. Due to some geotechnical concerns, this project will need to be constructed during the dry weather window, which is between June and November. And then also to be sensitive to the ongoing construction in the neighborhood, we would like to construct this project as part of the Northwest Thurman Street Reconstruction Sewer Project that is currently underway. Next slide, please. So here's an image of what we're after. The Northwest Aspen Combined Sewer Extension Project will connect to the existing sewer on private property. If you look at the upper right corner of this image, there's a purple dashed line, and that's the existing sewer that we intend to connect to. The blue portion of the extension is the portion that crosses private property and is the portion that requires easements. Sorry. The yellow portion is the portion that is in the right of way. I also just want to mention that the blue portion will be constructed using trenchless methods. And so we are really minimizing ground disturbance on private property. And we only expect excavation to be about an 8 by 8 foot square where the sewer is connecting to the existing sewer. And this excavation will be done by hand. Next slide, please. So in order to do this work, we are seeking 2 permanent easements from 2102 and 2024 Northwest Aspen. Their property lines are depicted in the red dashed line in that image. And then the new easement areas are shaded in blue. As you can see, the yellow areas are existing easements for public storm and a combined sewer that already cross private property. And as you can see, much of this area is already encumbered by existing easements. Next slide, please. We are also seeking 2 temporary construction easements from 3454 Northwest Thurman and 2024 Northwest Aspen. The terrain in this area of Northwest Portland is pretty steep, especially going downhill from Northwest Aspen. So access via 3454 is much more gradual, and it's a wider open space. So that is where we intend to access the sewer connection. Additionally, the extra space on 2024, or the additional easement there, will be for staging of materials. Next slide, please. So easement costs are largely dependent on appraisals and negotiations with property owners. And these negotiations can begin with the approval of the ordinance. We anticipate easements to be in place by summer for the dry weather construction. Next slide. And in closing, the approval of this ordinance gives PBOT the authority to compensate affected property owners for the needed permanent and temporary easements for this project. We've communicated the project need for property rights with property owners, and they've been invited to attend this reading. The next slide is, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you for the presentation, colleagues. Any questions at this point? Any public testimony, Keelan?
No one signed up for this item.
Very good. This is an emergency ordinance. Please call the roll.
Rubio,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. I almost didn't vote. I almost jumped right to the punchline. Didn't matter how I voted. It was still going to pass. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Thanks, Rachel. Next up is 139.
Authorize a contract with Cherry Road Technologies, Inc. for Infor public sector licenses and software for an amount not to exceed $4,060,000 over a 5-year period.
Colleagues, this is the second reading. We've already heard a presentation and had opportunity for public testimony. Any further business on this item? Seeing none. Keelan, go ahead and call the roll.
Rubio,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Last item of the day, 140.
Authorize the purchase of 2.00 acres of real property at 35227 Southeast Carpenter Lane in the amount of $875,000 to be used for the Bull Run Filtration Project.
Commissioner Maps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, the Portland Water Bureau provides drinking water to nearly 1 million people in the Portland metro area. In 2017, Portland City Council directed the Water Bureau to build a filtration facility to comply with state and federal safe drinking water rules. As part of this important project, the Water Bureau is asking Council for approval to acquire a property across from the filtration site. This property would help improve access to the site by developing a new entrance. Here with more details, we have Water Bureau Director Gabrielle Solmer and Ben Gossett. Director, please lead the discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner Maps, and good afternoon, Mayor and council members. For the record, I am Gabrielle Solmer, Portland Water Bureau Director, and with me are members of the filtration team, Project Manager David Peters and Property Manager Ben Gossett. And item 141, as the Commissioner mentioned, is a request for authorization to purchase 2 acres of property on Southeast Carpenter Lane. That's in eastern Multnomah County with an authorized amount of $875,000 plus closing and relocation costs. And maybe for the benefit of our newer members, this purchase is related to the Bull Run Filtration Project, which Council directed in 2017. The filtration project will be located on 90 acres of city-owned property that's adjacent to the property that we're talking about today. And you can see on the map here, the larger filtration site towards the middle, and then the subject property above in red. Acquiring this property will allow us to relocate the access to the site from the narrow Carpenter Lane, which you can see there, to the larger Southeast Dodge Park Boulevard, which is just above the property on the map. The owner of the property approached the Water Bureau last year with interest to sell, and we completed an appraisal 6 months ago, which showed a value of $825,000. We've updated that amount by 6% to account for increased value during the time between the appraisal and the closing date. And as required under state law, we'll also need to pay relocation costs. And you might remember that the Water Bureau also purchased property to the east of the one that we're discussing. Just thank you, Ben, for circling that. We've been able to rent out the house that's on that property until the property is needed, and we will look to do the same for this property. When we made that purchase, we were in the point in design that we knew the property was needed for either pipeline access or ingress and egress from the site, and the property was also purchased from a willing seller. As planning advanced, we learned that no one property would be suitable for both pipeline access and ingress and egress to the site. So with this acquisition, we can consolidate those functions and proceed with further design. And just in closing, some of the benefits of moving forward with the authorization now are to work with a willing seller rather than leave this to an eminent domain action in the future. Eminent domain is more costly, more time intensive, and can cause delays to the schedule, whereas working with a willing seller provides cost control, as well as design and timing certainty. Access to the project site is also a key issue that neighbors consistently raise through the public engagement process, and acquiring the property now will help the Water Bureau advance access plans and may allow us to improve safety and reduce permanent impacts to neighbors on the Southeast Carpenter Lane. So I will pause there and see if there are any questions.
Not seeing anybody yet, so why don't you go ahead?
Well, I think actually that concludes my presentation. We are available, but again, this is a fairly straightforward with a willing seller and with the need for the project.
Yeah, looks at it. Keelan, is there any public testimony on this item?
No, no one is on the call for this item.
Colleagues, anything else on this item before we move it to second? All right. Oh, wait, Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say to Gabrielle, it makes much more sense to have a willing seller, especially when you're so close to years of construction. And I just want to applaud the good work to get us to a mutually agreed upon settlement, because that could have got ugly and taken forever to have resolved. Great.
You are very, thank you. I will pass that along. We have an excellent team and a very patient landowner who's been working with us. So I really do think that this is the best outcome. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. And colleagues, we are adjourned. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.